Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's most parentally dubious work. I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versailles.
And I'm your conniving hostess, Kippos. In this debriefing, we're covering chapters 2.1 to 2.3 in Arc 2 Retraction.
What have you thought so far?
I've really been enjoying Arc 2. Those that follow my live read will know that I was using some very dubious emotes because Carson is just like, he's such a slut. I love him so much. He's the biggest slut in a
Oh my
Wildbow
goodness.
story so far, I think.
He,
He's
he
just fantastic.
he's incredible. The the number of people that have noted Carson's hotness multiplies every
Mm-hmm.
chapter. I think he's just slowly, methodically going through every manner of being attractive, just to make
Oh
sure
yeah.
that if you're playing any sort of game, he is good at that game.
Yeah, I'm very much thinking of that. There's that particular scene in 2.1 where he notes the girl whose name I've completely forgotten. But like he notes her and he like walks up as if to talk to her and then like sidles off to the side to get some water and it's like he's just such a and then like getting like touching her arm and being like, "Oh fuck."
No,
Like
but
he's such a
specifically, he's like, "Is
slut.
this okay?"
Yeah, oh, I love him. He's so whorish. He's so fun.
Yeah, that whole encounter, like swimming, volleyball. Fuck, I thought I had it. He gave the fuck a bit of
Yeah,
extra texture and a moment of eye contact. Uh it really
it's
is
perfectly whorish. Like, yeah.
frame perfect slutdom. And the thing is, he talks about it. He's proud of the skill that he's cultivated of getting in people's good books. And this is
Yeah,
just one of the
exactly.
battlefields that he's absolutely mastered apparently. So
Yeah,
our
it's so
roguish
fun.
bard to our mastermind of Mia,
Yeah.
a truly excellent compliment.
Yeah, I mean they complement each other like perfectly. They're so fun together. And they're so fun apart as well. I don't know. I really like these three chapters.
Mm. Just
Yeah,
to
I know
get
in our last
Oh
sorry.
no, you go.
Oh, in our last episode I said like we'll either get like Carson's perspective really soon or really late. And clearly Wildbow was thinking really soon for Carson's
Mm,
perspective.
mm.
And I'm very happy with it. It's been so much fun. Yeah, an interesting break from Mia, but a very fascinating one.
I think we may both be like, tempoed to other Wildbow stories and expecting things to pay off
Hmm.
in the far future, expecting to only learn what someone was truly thinking well into the future. But the pace of Claw is so much faster. A lot of the
Oh yeah.
curiosities are being satisfied the very next week. And I'm not complaining.
No, I mean I'm not complaining either. It is definitely different. Just yeah, in that pacing where I mean, if you look at like okay, obviously Pale was supposed to be about I guess about the same length that Claw is going to be. But I mean, as you get later into Pale, you know, it's like 24 arcs. It's like a 4-year story. So like things pay off from like literally years ago, and like you're only starting to learn motivations behind like antagonists like right at the end. But here, like yeah, this big anxiety of how does Carson feel about Mia is something that we're really being able to dig into now.
Yeah,
Which is yeah, it's fantastic. It's really fun.
I've been enjoying it too. Um, to get into the chapter summaries to orientate, in 2.1, Carson meets with three ex-clients of Mia's, Moses, Highland, and Sheila. Each provides their expertise in orchestrating a dastardly plan of kidnapping, and with a wink, a nudge, and a strategic amount of sledding, Carson helps to abduct some lovely ladies before heading home to talk to his wife and daughter about the kidnapping.
Yeah, and then in 2.2, Valentina looks after her cousins and her favorite person in the world, Addie. We then see Tia try his hardest at an athletics carnival, and Carson considers dismembering Ben. We meet Bolden, the gout-ridden mass murderer.
And in 2.3, Mia teaches us exactly how the city is split up under the kitchen. We dive into our second job of splitting up the kitchen, going after an acquaintance of the family head. However, danger's afoot, and Mia tells Carson that they can't kill this man. In response, Bolden puts a bolt through his brain.
So yeah, that was so fun. I know in my live read, I like specifically, got to the part where Bolden has like the crossbow up to like this dude's neck, and I was like, if I know my wild bow, like this dude is getting a bolt through the head, and then
Mm.
they disengage, they start to leave, and I'm like, oh, I don't know my wild bow. I was completely wrong. And then of course, no, I do know my wild bow. That motherfucker got a bolt through the head.
De-escalation in a wild bow story, but the
Crazy.
the thing that caught me in that chapter was Bolden also getting shot and his reaction to getting shot,
Yeah,
because
yeah, it was really interesting.
it's so very much the standard in a story that has lots of guns for bullets to fly like rain and for no
Hmm.
one to get wet. Um, but instead of having that sort of stormtrooper aim plot armor, the last breath of a character we're never going to see again is injuring someone with a bullet wound, who we're probably going to consistently impact the story from here on out. And
Yeah,
that the fact that Bolden's response to it is about the same as you'd expect from him getting gout. he
yeah,
he's
yeah,
like,
exactly.
ah, come on, what? Jeez, I was already dealing with one thing. Now I gotta deal with a bullet wound. Ugh, what a hassle. And it implies that. Well, I don't think it's an implication. I feel that we can know from his description in 2.2 that Bolden is absolutely someone who has been shot before, and
Yeah,
like presumably, this reaction is a fully genuine one of just frustration. Like it'll be fine. Um,
yeah. I think a part of that also, I think, leans into the fact that he's got to he must trust Mia pretty well, like Mia and Carson and all that,
mm,
considering like he's now completely at their mercy, and he's just like, ah, fuck, like I've been shot, shit, not on top of the gout,
I
but
don't know
like
if
he's
it's
not like,
trust
am I
though.
gonna die?
I
Okay.
I I'd sooner believe with Bolden that what is happening is not that he is trusting that people will look after him, but rather that he trusts himself to be able to deal with them if they try and
I
cross
yeah.
him.
I think that feels pretty accurate as well. Yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, I did want to talk a bit about if we just talk a bit about 2.1 because we're, first getting into Carson's head and it was really, really interesting. So, like, one of, not quite the first things, but like one of the very early things that we learn about Carson is his like personal philosophy on the world. Like,
Mm.
because we have mirrors of like 90% of the people that you meet are idiots. And of those like remaining 10%, 90% of them are lazy, yada yada. But Carson seems to be not that everyone's an idiot, but like 90% of the rules of society are bendable enough that you can just straight up ignore them. And talking
And
about the world being like an old Wild West movie, like, so it's like, as if all of the institutions of life have their faces, but they're empty, which is so
mm,
interesting.
it's definitely a notion that last week we talked a bit about how Mia is experiencing marginalization in the sense that the
Hmm.
structures of the world aren't built for her, and so she has to struggle quite a bit to work through and around them. And there's a lot of drudgery, there's a lot of struggle, um, because things aren't intuitive. Um, Flipping that script, we see Carson, for which things
Yeah.
are so intuitive and so smooth that it's almost like they're not even obstacles. Um,
Hmm.
like there is a bouncer at the door, but the purpose of the bouncer is to make sure the party is good. So when a really hot guy says that he's going to leave, the bouncer lets him in. Because
Yeah,
it's about there being
exactly.
customers. We need that slut on the dance floor,
Exactly.
and
They did need that slot there.
I mean, hey, listen, Imagine Dragons is playing.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have something to balance out
You
that.
gotta like balance out the cringe. Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, these the Carson's mentality of I can do pretty much whatever I want has, over the
Mm-hmm.
course of 2.1, it's every facet is covered so we can take this character forward, and know how he operates. And
Mm-hmm.
it's heartbreaking because in the same way that he can, like, there is no obstacles for him, there's also no architecture for him. He
Yeah.
slips through the cracks. He like, and there's no door that stays closed. So there's no way, nowhere to shut himself in and be safe. There's nowhere to settle down. He doesn't have, like, he can ignore so many boundaries. We hear more about it in 2.2, that he has no safety net because things are just so
Yeah.
fluid for him. And so his
Yeah.
love
He
for
has no
Mia,
anchor.
he has no anchor. Exactly. And Mia is his anchor, his beautiful
Mm-hmm.
Amazonian goddess of an anchor.
Now, I you did bring up Carson's love for Mia, and that is something that I am actually dubious about, and it feels a little mean. I don't know. I am not 100% certain how Carson feels about Mia. Like in 2.1, we see him talking about Mia as someone that elevates him, turns him into this super spy, and he says
Mm,
like, he doesn't want it, but he needs it. And it's the
mm,
same when he was rescuing Valentina.
mm,
And I'm just like, I'm very curious because later on in 2.1, like right near the end, he notes that, he checks in on Ripley and Tia and he says that, he adores them both and they adore him. But he never actually says how he feels about Mia,
mm,
except for this, like, this need for her in terms of, in terms of their work. And
mm.
obviously, like, he does, like, say, like, my Amazon, which, she is, to be fair. Um, but I'm just, yeah, I'm not 100% if he like loves her or if he is, I guess, like addicted to the feeling of being with her.
Mm. It's interesting because he calls the super spy sentiment a, like, a addicted person's justification. It's it
Mm-hmm.
he thinks it's a good argument. It's defensible. It's something that he can brag about. It's something that he can stand beside. But it doesn't. It's built after the truth, and it's
Yeah.
something to justify a decision he's already made. So it's more a defensive tool than a supporting structure. And
Hmm.
we come to the very end where he's like, lying with Mia, and it's peaceful, and it was peaceful, the two of them together like this, while three families would be going insane with worry and grief. Um, like, they've just driven a bunch of people mad, but then the two of them are just cuddled up together, calming down and getting some rest.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, like, I think there are, as you were saying, holes in his narrative. Like, we don't
Mm-hmm.
know yet, how it is that he knows Tyr's biodad, and we
Yeah.
don't know how it is that he came to support Mia in both the kidnapping of their children, or in the wider work that they did. Did they meet through this kind of work? Did Carson seek Mia out and it turned out to be very compatible? Like, what order do these things happen? We don't know that yet. Um,
Yeah.
this sensation of Carson's, that he has to be with Mia because, like, it's a fundamental need. It's like an addiction, because the way he articulates that is it's his place to stay, it's his anchor, it's his
Mm-hmm.
stability. Um, and it is interesting wondering whether, if he could find stability elsewhere, he would go there instead, or if
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
if what he is feeling is his most, like, sincere expression of love, that he wants to stay with Mia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I kind of find myself like if Mia was like, that's it, no more crime shit, um, would Carson stay?
Hmm.
And it's hard to know. And especially like, if Mia said no more crime shit and the kids weren't in the picture, would Carson stay?
Hmm. I
I
think,
kind of, I think not. That
within
like
that
my heart
format,
leans not.
within that format, if Carson didn't get to slut around every once in a while under his, wife's dutiful notice and do things like
Mm-hmm.
lean on the door and arrive in bed wearing no clothes, or like just get to show off to someone that he gets to show off to every day, or have what he poses to
Hmm.
himself as like a puzzle, a challenge of
Yeah.
eventually getting Mia to truly trust that he is sincere about all of these things because she's a tougher nut to crack than the people that he can flirt with at the dance floor.
Hmm.
Um, it's like I don't know if like we remove any one layer of this onion, it stops being an onion. I think
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
I at least just from the pitch of 2.1 on I think it is his version of love where he is a man that can
Hmm.
manipulate and exists in heavily socially manipulative spheres where he knows
Hmm.
how to flaunt, he knows how to get in someone's good graces, and he's found someone that knows that and is willing to let him do that without actually being nearly as vulnerable to it as most people are, and is steady and reliable, um, which is really sweet. I
Yeah.
do understand being in the camp of a number of Reddit users that are simping for either of Carson or Mia and would like the other ones to be out of the picture, but we'll get into that in the discussion question.
That's cowardice. I love them both. I want them both to be with me, actually. Please, thank you.
A polyamorous
um,
solution, truly.
yeah, exactly. I did on that kind of same note. There is a part where, where Carson says that, I'm still smiling. I love coming to bed to find you here. Like, I missed you last night. And noting that, oh, would she smile one day when he said something like that? And he was okay if not. And I don't know how to read that. I'm not sure
Mm,
if that's kind of more of a lean towards, oh, he does love her. He's not doing this for any kind of manipulation or anything. He's just expressing, the truth to her. And if she doesn't hear it, then that's okay.
mm,
Or does it speak to more of a less of an emotional attachment where he's like, she doesn't believe me, whatever. I don't really care.
mm.
Yeah.
Like, have I already gotten what I need out of this equation, and I don't need
Mm-hmm.
actually to be like I don't need the sincere emotional connection, or is it actually I recognize a sincere emotional connection without that signal? Unclear.
Yeah. I think kind of one way I put it in my own notes here is like, it could definitely be that he's grown out of like that whole like reach the top floor in the club like phase of his life, because he does
Mm,
note that when he was younger he would have loved to reach the top floor of the club that they go to, that the kitchen owns.
mm,
So yeah, I don't know. I'm still very very curious about them, and
mm,
I go a little back and forward on how I think Carson feels about Mia.
mm. Actually, as a point of transition, but maybe talking about Ben and Natalie, um,
Mm-hmm.
seeing the tier at the athletics carnival, getting to have Mia and Carson in a pretty public space, and also talking about other relationships, because who hasn't asked a partner whether or not they can kill someone that's bothering them for them? It's a sweet thing. It's
Yeah.
it's it's
Look,
it's a perfectly normal notion.
let they
um,
who is without sin cast the first stone here is what I say.
um,
And I'm not throwing any stones.
Absolutely not. There's too many glass houses in this skyscraper city.
Mm-hmm.
The the thing that I note is that when being around Mia in public, he takes special note of the people that might like to pry them apart. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there was the note of the parent that had been just vigorously flirting with him, presumably
Yeah.
because she thought that she was above Mia's league and that Carson was out of her league. So Carson
Yeah.
deliberately,
Mrs. Scalf, actually,
yes.
as well, which is, I think, is very
Oh,
important to note. The Mrs. Scalf is was
thank
her
you for
name.
your keen eye for detail, indeed.
Yeah.
But
Um.
it's in reaction to that that he then shows Mia more affection because he knows that Mia doesn't
Yeah.
need that kind of thing, and also is like so distressed and paranoid that she doesn't even really register it as a sincere expression. Because
Mm-hmm.
we know in earlier chapters he doesn't bother to smile when they're alone.
Yeah.
He will start providing a massage without prompting, but that's because there's a practical reason for it. Where like, no, you have
Hmm.
a chronic pain. I'm going to help treat that as a normal thing to be doing without needing to request or signal anything with it. He's not trying to get into bed with her by doing that, for example. But the
Yeah.
moment that they're in a public space, suddenly he's being more affectionate to Mia, just to
Hmm.
really stick it in someone else's face, just to really bother them.
Yeah. And
And
yeah,
uh,
I do want to get into like, yeah, I do
ranked
want to get into
competitive
that
dating.
because yeah. Well, it's like it's very much like it's a thing that comes through a lot in discussions about like ableism and also like transphobia and stuff, and this kind of also links to the Mia trans metaphor thing, but it definitely comes through with ableism as well, where it's like, like why are you with this person when you could be with a nice, normal person that, is
Hmm.
good and stuff. And you can
Why
definitely
be
see
with
that
your
with
wife
like
when you
the
could be with a different married woman?
yeah, exactly. But one that is normal, one that's good and normal. So yeah, I like and this is something that does come through in real life a
Hmm.
lot. Against with basically any like marginalized group, you will see that people will, occasionally and very quote unquote well meaning, but very prejudiced, like, oh, why are you with this person? It would be a lot easier if you are with
Hmm.
someone, that's quote unquote normal or someone that's, more like you. And
Hmm.
again, like you see it a lot with like, the quote unquote like the racist uncle or whatever. It's like, why are you with like that person? You should be with like, someone like us,
Hmm.
you know, where it's very much like, yeah, it's kind of placing hierarchies in the world and saying, well, people of this social category, whether it's, trans people, queer people in general, people that are disabled, or people of, different races or whatever,
Hmm.
and they're saying, everyone in all of these groups are below us, the good, normal, nice people.
The definition of normal just happens to center me as the center of the universe. All of my
Yeah,
experiences are
exactly.
the normal ones.
Yeah, normal is just whatever you are, and then everyone else is weird. And if people are, different enough, then you can say, well, they're not like me anymore. They're a different social class and therefore they're below me. Yeah, which I think is very, very interesting. And
It isn't interesting
yeah,
also that within Mia as someone who is abnormal, um,
hmm,
and experiencing that level of prejudice in the circles that she is in socially, um, it's also something that she internalizes herself because in
yeah,
her mind, 90% of people are idiots, which is
hmm,
another otherization. It's another like action of hierarchy. The difference is she doesn't conscientiously place herself anywhere in the hierarchy. When Ripley
hmm,
says to her, "Mom, please remember that you're smart," she's trying to articulate something that's a bit different, which is that she knows that she has intelligence. It's that she lost
hmm,
everything else when she was injured. Um,
yeah,
and even within that, we talked previously about how the person that Mia is preparing her kids for in her internal monologue is an antagonistic version of Mia, someone
yeah.
who is as
It's yeah,
dedicated, as detail oriented. But
hmm,
she never quite says that. She never quite says the ideal genius, the like the ultimate opponent, the worthy opponent would just be me again,
yeah.
and Mia again. Um, and
Thank you.
and I have such a love of puns. Um,
Yeah,
but it means so much to me that the kids are called Rip and Tear. I was talking earlier to
hmm,
a friend
so
that
fun.
suggested that perhaps Carson it was born in a car, um, but just to make all the
Jesus.
names perfect. Um,
Oh, that's horrible. Thank you.
Moses is going to split through a body of water. Um,
Good for
Geo
him.
is going to get a stand.
Sorry,
Um,
who?
Um, um,
I think you mean Valentina is going to get a Soviet sniper rifle.
of course,
The
yes.
USS Val. I think no,
Um,
it's not the USS. That's a boat thing.
I'm
The
I'm
something Val.
we will make a complete list of puns for every character in this story
We
at
will.
some point. It is inevitable. I wouldn't even have to try and do it. Um,
Fantastic.
but actually, speaking of Valentina, um,
Mm-hmm.
have I think we've talked about Carson, we talked about Mia, we talked about their perspectives on prejudice, and here we have a discussion with Valentina, which is Carson trying to communicate not just how the job is done, but some of the life philosophy behind it as it relates to
Yeah.
Valentina's situation. And he's like freely volunteering, like some of the practical experiences. He's like accepting that she feels weak in some ways, and it's like volunteering. We can teach you some of the practical things. I have some experience with
Oh,
homelessness.
so
I can
wholesome.
tell you how I got out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately being that paternal, but in a paternal, like friend manner of like now my kid is getting older, I'll be more peer to peer with them. Um,
Yeah.
and it's it's many things in 2.2 stand out, but the thing that I can't
Oh,
get over
yes.
is just how the tone is so sincere as Carson is like, yeah, I'll teach you the family trade. Like, no, I understand that you're worried about that kind of thing. Like, body image issues happen to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the code for the human prison is 1412.
Yeah.
Make sure
Yep.
you don't get stuck in the airlock. Would you like any of the
Oh,
videos for the TV we have installed? We can swap some things out. Next bunker run. Food's over there. It's the the manner in which this perfectly sincere conversation happens simultaneously with the mundanity of criminality is
mm-hmm.
so fun.
Oh,
I was
it's
giggling
so
as
good.
the things like really change topic, and like Bella is just asking like, can I torture Addie, please Dad,
Yeah.
can I torture Addie? And Carson's like, no, we're good people. Mia says that we're good people, okay? So
Yeah. Mia said
since
so, so we have to be.
Mia said that we specifically have to be good people, and that's very hard to do. So we're not allowed to do any torture. Just consider from a strategic perspective, okay? Like I know the whole
Yeah.
being morally good thing
Oh,
isn't particularly convincing. It's just like it's so sincerely crazy. Like they're
mm-hmm.
talking about people locked in another room that are
Yeah.
actively going insane from the isolation and are picking at the
Mm-hmm.
walls trying to find a way out. And he's like, oh, just make
Yeah.
sure that if the ventilation fails, you call someone immediately because, if you find someone on the bottom of the ladder, they might not be able to get up, but also you might immediately asphyxiate. So yeah, just
Yeah.
call your mom. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh my
Pretty much.
goodness.
I do. Yeah. There is a fair amount that I want to get into there. Like, also on like the like, oh, let me take off the top of this coffee table. Oh, Mia really got into me this one time that I spilled the coffee on her. So, she wouldn't mind if I forget an anniversary, but if I spilled coffee on her, she's really pissed. And Valentina be like, oh, well, you shouldn't forget anniversaries. And then immediately launching it through. Okay, so anyway, this is how you control all of the cameras and the cells for looking at these three.
Just classic father-daughter bonding activities.
Yeah, yeah,
They've only been related for a week, and they're already have so much
exactly.
rapport. It's so good.
It's so good. I really liked kind of thinking about like, because obviously Valentina thinks Addie is like the biggest cunt in the universe. Like she is the Antichrist.
Mm.
But then you kind of like look at what she did, and yeah, okay, it's shitty. Like she kind of let slip that Valentina's probably like related to organized crime. Like,
Mm.
okay, that sucks. But then we look one chapter back when we're talking to Moses and when we're talking to Sheila, and yeah, they say like you don't have friends outside the family anyway. Like by the time that you're in your mid-teens, like
Mm.
you just can't have friends outside the family because they don't know that you're in organized crime, and so you have to keep things on the down low. So
Mm.
all your friends have to be your cousins anyway. So like, yeah, what Annie did was shitty, but she just kind of accelerated what would happen.
It's interesting
anyway.
because the question becomes, obviously Addie would have been supported in supporting the structure there and
Hmm.
maintaining the family in group. Um, so maybe the only reason that she did it, maybe the only reason that she felt so happy with herself and smug was because a parent had explained that situation to her. And
Yeah.
she had felt like you can look at this equation and go, these are kids that
Hmm.
their parents are acting through, the parents acting through the children. If Valentina is the heiress to some degree with of Davy's side of the family, and Addie manages to get one over on her, then that's biting up the hierarchy by playing the game that it's supposed to reinforce. And she's like, nice, okay, I'm winning. There's like
Hmm.
I will be rewarded within the family dynamic. Meanwhile, no one explains that to Valentina. So
Yeah.
Valentina just suffers. She just feels isolated. She feels lonelier, and someone else gets to feel all hoity-toity about it. Um, and then there's no decompression because it's all one echo chamber. So the grudge
Hmm.
festers and has nowhere to express itself. And what do you know? The moment Valentina is given an opportunity to any sort of outlet, she, one, connects really hard, and like I would say this is like a very rapid attachment that um, shows how little support Valentina was given, that she is immediately confiding in Carson, willing to work with him, that like she's
Hmm.
obviously been really wanting this sort of connection. So the first opportunity she gets, she latches on to the first person that volunteers. But also, the moment that she's given power over Addie, that hostility starts to bubble over, and she's thinking in like soul trap terms. Um, and
Hmm.
we
Yeah.
don't see
Pretty messed up.
Valentina follow through. We don't see Valentina
Yet.
actually hurt Addie. Maybe she will yet. We can watch that space. But like this is how it starts, right? Like
Hmm.
here is someone who is bearing a grudge because someone else did what they thought was the right thing and was smug about it. Um, and from just the harm done for without explanation that someone else got to feel good about, Addie is flanderized into a truly evil person that Valentina hates with all her guts. And like it's not necessarily connected to whether Addie is a bad person or whether Addie would do it again or in completely different context would do something similar. It's just the true facts of the world to this teenager. And so she's absolutely
Yeah.
considering doing a crime.
Yeah.
And seeing that happen step by step, and then having these truly splendid role models of Carson and Mia just saying, hey, we're supposed to be good people. No, we can't do that. That's too much. We've already kidnapped her. Come on.
Well, I
Like,
mean, to be fair, actually, Carson does say that, like, if you really, really have to do it, we can probably do it. But it does mean that Davy might get, like, closer to you.
mm,
Like, so they're not even saying, like, we could never, like, we are absolutely good people. We would never do something terrible like that.
mm.
I mean, like, Mia would probably push back a lot harder than what Carson did. But,
Consider
like,
the
Carson's like,
practicalities.
if you have to. Yeah, exactly. Like,
But
yeah,
like,
which also, like, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sorry, go on.
it is appealing to a mindset that is already that amoral or even like antagonistic. It is like the way that you the enrichment of kids, you can't just take the scissors off of them when they're running with scissors. You gotta give them something else to
Mm-hmm.
hold. It's gotta be replacement behavior. Like consider the practicalities of running with scissors. Consider the practicalities of torturing Addie. It's
Yeah.
it's good parenting in that it's completely amoral in its approach. Um,
Yeah, and I did like that actually as well with Carson saying like, yeah, let's dismember Ben. You know, I could do it. Like we could give it a shot. And Mia says, oh well, no, obviously straight away you can't do that because you're not going to have the same like type of knife. Yada yada. Like you won't be able to get the cuts to mirror. And then he's like, oh, well, you could maybe look into that and find that. And she's like, oh, but then we'd need doctors, yada yada. And then it's like, oh, and we're good people. We probably shouldn't do that. And it's like, yeah, okay, but like, I love that even between the two of them, like, it's practicality first, And then the moral argument comes later when they're like, oh, actually, yeah, maybe let's not.
Mm.
Maybe we don't want to be the kind of people that, torture and dismember someone,
I'm
But
remembering
practically, this
how
is why
that
not.
that really parallels Carson's like I want to stay with Mia, so I'll say that I'm being a super spy. um
Hmm.
but except here it's I can't practically justify dismembering Ben. So I'll say it's because I'm a good person that it's not happening.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, it's fun. Oh, I do want to note in 2.2, like one of the first things we get is we get the first beat of something that so far has two beats of Carson being like looking for a camera or like a bug. In this case, he's looking for a drone while letting Valentina out to, come to the girls.
Mm.
And saying, "Oh, well, there's no drone there, but if there was, we'd already be fucked." And it's like, and it happens again in 2.3 when they go to the hospital, and Carson checks in with Mia, like, "Oh, are there any, can we talk openly here?" And she's like, "Yeah, there's no bugs." And then it's like, "Yeah, but if there was, we'd be fucked. Like, we'd have to run." And I am very much looking forward to what I can only hope is a three-beat of Carson asking that question again.
And
Because,
it'll either be there was one all along and they missed it every time,
so good.
which would be heart-wrenching, like if Valentina
Oh,
had a tracker all along or something like that.
oh my god. My heart would genuinely, I might have a heart attack, but it would be so good.
It would be very good. Or of course, discovering one in that moment after something important has
Oh,
been said.
yeah. Oh, so good.
Really got to keep an eye out for that. That great catch.
Yeah, I'm already looking forward to that third beat. I really, really am.
There's along that line. There was something we've written it under expectations, um, and I'd like to use it as an opportunity just to talk about the arc name for a little bit, um,
Mm-hmm.
which is that in 2.1 we get to see a bit of Mia becoming a mob boss. We get to see her scoping out the scale of the Cavalcanti kitchen. We get to hear some names. In 2.3 we get more. The picture begins to coalesce of just how like what they're up against. And of course, their plan over the course of 2.1 and 2, why these children are being kidnapped is to destabilize this operation and turn people against Davy,
Mm-hmm.
and through doing that, be able to, like, one, collapse away their competitor so that they don't have to worry as much about Davy maybe chasing up on Valentina.
Mm-hmm.
Two, possibly move into that space. But three, we get this at the end of 1.7. The offer to Max Highland was to resettle him, to do one last job, and then he'll leave the city, which would make it safer to stay in the city. And the arc is called Retraction. So there's the retracting of the claw, like trying to make things softer, trying not to lash out at things, which fits
Mm-hmm.
for a sort of an interpretation where this is what playing it safer looks like and trying to stabilize things again looks like by destabilizing the Cavalcantis. Um, but there's also the notion of this is like retracting the operation for their business of making people go MIA. Um, Yet another pun for Mia. Um, but
Oh my god. Yeah, okay. That's
tish.
really good. Okay,
Um,
I've got to assume that that one's on purpose, Wildbow, and good fucking job. That's peak.
See, this is the thing about writing a character called Mia for unloving puns at some point. I've got all these puns already. I'm just slowly unpacking them at what I think is a more reasonable pace than just listing off my favorite thing. Um,
That's fair.
but the the thing that I am catching on to is that my initial assumption was that Mia was becoming a gang boss and was trying to take over the kitchen. But
Mm-hmm.
actually, this might be closer to um, an a downsizing in their operation, an attempt to make things so that when they do make an exit, which Mia is still talking about, she's still saying we might need to get out of the city.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this is not an attempt to anchor them further, but actually an attempt to make sure that the other customers are away, and then when they leave, it should be a bit more stable. No one will follow after Valentina. It's their retraction, which is interesting because even though Carson is very ride or die and will agree with any plan the moment that it's explained to him, the reason is that he wants to stay with Mia, and he wants stability, and he wants Ripley and Tyr to be happy, and like he's invested in the mutual adoration there. Um, so even though he hasn't voiced it yet, he doesn't seem the sort that would. I think maybe Carson doesn't want to leave. Um, and like obviously it's a hassle to move cities. Obviously it'd be really difficult. And like that would require this scale of operation to try and, maybe like at some point when the momentum is high enough where they're just about to go, this team of mercenaries will target Natalie. Um, but the I do think that as far as retraction goes, Mia might be trying to get out of here in the best way that she can, which requires a lot more steps. And
Mm-hmm.
Carson wouldn't want to. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm that's the space that I'm watching, as far as the signal's getting, because for the point to be Mia's arc and for retraction to be Carson's arc is like very telling in terms of a potential like a potential misalignment in their priorities. Um,
Hmm.
and
I really like that.
it'd be really tragic if they started to not see eye to eye because they are so good at it.
Ah, they are so good. Yeah. Okay, so I did want to talk about, I don't know, there's just some fun little things that happened and a couple more things I wanted to, dive into bigly, but some of them are just fun, like Valentina saying that, oh, Mia always called Davy Davy, not like my father, and Carson being a bit more like wishy-washy on it and saying like, oh, it's just OPSEC. And it's like, no, like Geo never existed, in Mia's mind. Like Geo is dead. Like that girl is gone. Valentina exists, and Valentina is their daughter who has an unfortunate tie to Davy, which I just think is, yeah, it's very fun that, Carson thinks in terms of like OPSEC, and Mia just doesn't. Like we just straight up know that that's not how Mia thinks about these things. Like Valentina's just her daughter. Like she doesn't care about okay, she does care about OPSEC, but that's not why
It's not the
she's
center of
saying,
her justifications.
yeah, exactly. Her family is the center of her justifications. I did just want to quickly define OPSEC, because I know not everybody knows the term, and I just kind of only just remembered that while writing these notes. So OPSEC is shorthand for Operation Security, which generally is just a way to refer to like keeping information, close to your chest while completing a job or some kind of task. So, yeah. Another kind of short thing I wanted to note is like, we talk about the government falling apart the first time.
When
so
the dog first
obviously the
caught
government,
its tail.
yeah, when the dog first caught its tail. And, I do want to jump in, like, the dog catching its tail, it feels very like, Trump getting a re-election, and properly doing like we're going to crack down on all the migrants, and then not having any fucking migrants in your country. And, incoming population is good for a country. It helps with jobs, and it helps with better social, like everything. Like, more migrants is more good, in my very good, eloquent words.
I study economics, and I can assure you, more migrants is more good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I think that's really interesting that we've got, the dog catching its own tail the first time when, and clearly that's around the time that the government first fell apart. And so now it's curious, like, what time is this one? Like, is this the second time the government has fallen apart? Is it the third, the fourth, the fifth?
Well, technically
We just
speaking,
don't know.
in the classification system of governments falling apart, burning down a city over an election is only an zero point 0.5. So
Okay.
score-wise, we're actually at 7.34 if we total out
Uh,
the number of half
if
collapses,
we add them all
trips,
up, yeah.
fumbles.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just think, yeah, it's really interesting. And someone noted in my live read, I'm sorry, I don't remember who noted it, that like if you don't fix the underlying reasons why something like this happens, then yeah, no shit, it's going to keep on happening if you just kind of plug up the holes and say, well, now the government's good again.
Hmm.
Well, okay, it's not good. It's going to fall again for those exact same reasons that it fell the first time.
Hmm.
And I think that really links to something we were talking about last week when we were talking about Mia's life as like, Mia's life feels really solid and really stable in all of these different ways, but it's built on that house of cards. Like it's built on the rotten foundation of, stealing a child.
Hmm.
And I like that kind of parallel to the government where, they just keep on patching things up, and it can seem pretty okay from the top, but the fundamentals are broken.
Hmm.
And when your fundamentals are broken, it's only a matter of time until everything goes to hell.
And it's a further compliment to Carson's sentiment that everything is hollow.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
like if the government is more of a perpetual crisis machine that just bursts into flames once every once every election cycle, rather than assert any rule of law. Like we learn about the private police this chapter,
Mm-hmm.
so which did cause me to. I haven't quite known what to say, what genre this story is in. Like, there's a bit of cli-fi, like climate sci-fi going on, where like we're a bit it's speculative fiction, a bit further in the future. It's a crime procedural. We're watching crimes happen, and we're seeing things into the nitty gritty. But knowing that there's private police, we can officially upgrade it to dystopia.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
if the enforcement of law has been privatized, this is just feudalism. And
Yeah.
it's initially I had been thinking of adding to the Crime Corner's rap sheet, and trying and adding mercenary work to it, because that's
Mm-hmm.
a pretty highly legislated territory. It's not everyone that can hire Pinkertons. But
Yeah.
I think maybe that's no longer a law in this setting, because or maybe you just need
Yeah. That might
a
just be
license
legal.
for it.
Yeah. Well, probably. You probably need, a license and a lot of money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I did also want to talk about like Tyr, like because we get this note, and you pointed out just before about Carson like noting that, oh, I remember Tyr's bio dad. But like I really love how ambiguous that statement still is. So like it could genuinely still be that Tyr is Mia's kid. Or maybe Carson even brought Tyr with him into this relationship.
Oh my
But
goodness, we're
very
both single parents that
fascinatingly,
have kidnapped our children. Do you want to
yeah,
maybe?
that's when I was writing that line in my notes, I was like, oh my God, it's like, yeah, there is definitely that like genre of like family movie of like, oh, our parents are both divorced. Maybe they should start going out, like that kind of rom-com kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I love the idea of that being how this worked. But yeah, because Carson thinks about Tyr's bio dad, and presumably Mia thinks about it as well. And then, Carson says, oh, both of them presumably like thinking along similar lines. They look at Natalie Teal, and it's like, well, what does that mean? I think that is pointing towards Carson maybe brought Tyr into the, like, stole Tyr as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. I'm very curious about that.
I'm ready to discover that, like I think at this point in the story we're quite primed for, obviously we'll get into this in a discussion question, but things like
Hmm.
heinous crimes, things that aren't just wrong but also kind of fucked up. Um,
Yeah.
and I would be interested to learn that Tyr's reason for being in the family is like it could actually be a lot more heartfelt, um because
Hmm.
like see Carson as someone that is very emotionally intelligent and deeply emotionally manipulative. So if he ends
Mm-hmm.
up in custody of a child, did he steal the baby because he wanted a kid to be adored by? He has no like anchoring structure, so that's a surprise. But did he get
Yeah.
like did someone give him like someone that he respected, the bio dad that he's remembering and might think highly of, that he's like looking at Tyr and seeing might grow into? Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's a possibility in my mind that if you gave Carson, who has no roots and no stability, a kid to look after as like a final wish, or like I'm not able to do this, can I trust you, can you do this? um if Tyr was in his custody under surprising circumstances, his first port of call might have been finding Mia, or finding someone like Mia,
Yeah.
because he needed something that he fundamentally didn't have, which was stability for his kid.
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah.
and it would be
And
interesting to
along
learn.
that, yeah, along that line, there is this comment made by Carson that, when they're talking about kind of laying everything on the line for Valentina as someone as a near stranger, that they've only known for a week. Like Carson specifically notes that Mia once did that for him as a near stranger, laying it all on the line. And I can't help but feel that that really does like point towards, yeah, Carson brought Tia into this family. Like
Hmm.
Carson and Tia came as their own little package deal into the family. And I don't know, it feels like it makes sense for why Mia was kind of more willing to put up with his bullshit, I guess, is a
Hmm.
way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, so it's very, very curious. I'm desperate to learn more. Very excited.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I do also want to note that, like, obviously we've talked a little bit about Bolden, but I love how fucking stone cold he is. Like,
This absolute Rambo motherfucker.
I know, like, he fought for like genuine years for his property, and then eventually he backed off, and it's like, oh, okay, so they got the property then. It's like, no, he went and started people smuggling, made hundreds of thousands of dollars, then hired presumably like some kind of cartel. I assume that is the kind of group that is engaged in people smuggling into places like the United States. But yeah, like hired an organized crime group to kill everybody on the land that he was fighting for and gave up for. And then he went back in and hunted down anybody that remained, like wiped out all of the stragglers. Like, holy shit. Like, this guy's mad.
This
Just very, yeah.
this absolute man army,
Yeah, right. Oh,
who just wants to be left alone,
yeah, he
is
just wants his property. Oh, so good.
this is what happens when the guy who tells the kids to get off his damn lawn stands up from his rocking chair. He's got
Yeah,
the gout, so he's
yeah,
not happy about it.
exactly. And I really, really liked, like, the ending part of this chapter is, having Bolden in on the job means people will die. We just have to make sure it's the right people. And then the next chapter, it's the wrong fucking person. Like, straight away we get the payoff to the, we have to make sure it's just the right people that Bolden kills. And yeah, like, almost immediately, no, it's the wrong fucking people. Which is so fun.
The fact that he used a crossbow to kill someone, and because he did, and the arrow was slow, he got injured.
Yeah.
We got into it earlier. There's one last dimension to that. The fact that Bolden gets shot first, and he's the guy who can
Mm-hmm.
cope with it, and he's going to complain about it loudly, I think sort of crosses the line for other people getting shot. So from now on, as we read
Yeah.
this, we have to understand that anytime a gun shows up, there like if Bolden, the one-armed man army, can get shot, and none of his cool woodsing skills
Mm-hmm.
can let him dodge a bullet, and in fact, his choice to use a crossbow is like sure, it's aesthetically pleasing and it's very like melodramatic and like cool of you, but it also got you shot. So um
Yeah.
now that he's been hit, anyone can be. And
Yeah.
like we're dealing with an organized crime syndicate. Everyone's got guns.
Yeah.
We're in America.
Which
Everyone's
is
got
so
guns.
scary. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's so it's very wild boat, I think, to not ignore guns, like, because obviously you see it in a lot of media, and I'm sure this has been talked to death on all of the other podcasts about wild boar stuff, but like when a gun shows up in like a crime movie, you're like, yeah, okay, like you kind of expect everyone to have a gun,
Yeah.
whatever. But here, a gun shows up, and there are immediately huge consequences because don't fuck around with guns. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it's very true across a lot of, across essentially all of Wild Boar's works. Is like, if you bring a gun to a situation, like, that is a huge escalation, and it deserves to be treated seriously. And in this case, yeah, it was treated fucking seriously.
Mm.
Yeah, just so good. Yeah, I do also, in 2.3 there were a couple of really great parts. I mean, there were great parts everywhere, but like, I really enjoyed Carson like very blatantly manipulating Mia, by kind of asking about the bugs in like the asking, oh, is this room like safe to talk in, and then she's the one that says, oh yeah, no, it's fine. Therefore, it doesn't have to be him saying there's no bug, there's not going to be any bugs in here, and then she'd immediately be like, well, now I have to check. Which I think it's just like, it's this brilliant little piece of manipulation to kind of show how he knows her so well. And, it's kind of like, it's the kind of thing I do at work sometimes. Because I have a very people oriented job, and sometimes when someone's really anxious and stuff like that, you kind of have to ask the leading question to kind of get them to come to a conclusion on their own.
Yeah.
That is the conclusion that you want them to have.
It's interesting because when we think of Carson's skills, what he brings to the table in their team, this level of manipulative insight of like he can obviously like fully within the bounds of expectations, not necessarily rules which he'll just ignore, but like knowing what will scare someone off or what will give someone the wrong impression or take them further away from what he wants. He can manipulate people, and he has that degree of emotional intelligence. Turning it to benevolent ends and being a means of caring for someone is it's fascinating as a skill thing, and also feeds almost directly into the tension between criminal act, like breaking of rules, and heinous acts, like bad things, morally bad things done. I would say this is a morally good manipulation of someone's mental state. It's only because he knows his wife so well that he knows that he can make her calmer by pretending that he's worried.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, it ties into that kind of like the idea of, all conversation is manipulation, yada, yada. Yeah, sure. But this is very explicit. Like, this was manipulation. Like, he very explicitly went, I'm going to manipulate her to make her feel more at ease and calmer and, just more relaxed. And because some people, and I have known people like this, are just manipulative. Like, value neutral. They are just, as people, the way they speak, the way they kind of naturally deal with people is very manipulative. And you can definitely turn that to, these positive, like very kind ways of manipulating people, where you kind of help people and be kind and encourage people to be, calmer and more chill and happier. Or you can be, a dick about it. And like the connotation with manipulative people is generally that, they're dicks about it. But that's just, like, it's just not always the case. Sometimes people are manipulative in a nice way.
I have this habit of whenever I manipulate someone as a like I've recognized that I've conscientiously made a decision to treat them differently from how I would. I then compulsively reveal what I've done, because it feels kind of like it feels kind of messed up that I said something blatantly false because I figured you'd find it funny. So like even that like lowest level of the ironic and the like bits, I
Yeah.
feel a an this sort of like distinct discomfort at having like done that.
Mm-hmm.
So I will often then show someone my working, um, and I think it's a good habit to have on an interpersonal level, because
Mm-hmm.
if someone knows that you're doing it and knows that it's in your repertoire, um, I think it is less invasive to be done. Because like if someone is
Yeah.
in a distress situation, especially something as high strung and lives on the line as what Mia is like going through right now,
Mm-hmm.
if you could ask them objectively, can you make me feel better in a way that has no consequences, even if it's a bit weird and treats me like a machine? They might say,
Yeah.
yeah, because I will take any calm that I can get. Um,
Yeah.
and
It's like if you gave me a like just a 2 question like little questionnaire which says, oh sorry, a 1 question with 2 options, just like, do you want to be like 10% less stressed right now?
mm,
Say yes. Carson walks in, makes that comment. Say no, and he doesn't. And
mm,
it's like, yeah, she's gonna pick to be less stressed. Like,
mm.
you know.
Especially because it's not a single interaction. Because we see what Carson can
Mm-hmm.
do with single interactions in
Yeah.
2.1. He
So good.
through flirtation and through like the targeted crossing of boundaries, where he says, "Is this okay?" before he starts feeling up someone's muscles as a way to proposition
Yeah.
them. Um,
Oh, so
like
good.
that is incredibly manipulative. It's also a game
Mm-hmm.
that someone might come to a club to play, and the fact that it
Yeah.
then is used to platform a crime and kidnap this individual, is quite monstrous, because that's
Mm-hmm.
it's a terrifying possibility. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then you have an ongoing relationship where people can talk about what had happened and hold each other accountable, and things are continuous, and there's like multiple interactions stacked onto each other every day, day after day. You get to this point where it becomes not with just acceptable, but within the acceptance. Like there,
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that at some point Mia told Carson that she doesn't trust his expressions,
Mm-hmm.
because she's seen him work and knows that he uses his face for manipulating people. So she does not believe anytime he smiles. And what does Carson do? He stops smiling, when in private
Yeah.
with her, because he is invested, even as a person that is that conscientious of how he is expressing himself.
Mm-hmm.
He accepts what his partner has said, changes his behavior. So there's no reason to believe that when things have settled down, Carson won't go, "The only reason I ask you about bugs is because I know you know, and you feel better about certainty." And Mia goes, "That's so sweet of you. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for emotionally manipulating me into being happier. I love my darling husband." And
Yeah.
like it's because that there is a collaborative and heavily, like, I would almost call it like rehabilitative justice approach to like these little manipulations and like the unfair parts of conversation where focus is elsewhere so you can reach past someone's defenses,
Mm-hmm.
then getting tabled out at the end of the day, because at the end of the day they're both cooperating, they're both being transparent with each other, they talk about their issues, and it rounds out to even those little choices to control someone for their benefit being something that they agreed to and want to happen again, which is sweet.
Yeah. It's so sweet. It feels weird that it's sweet, but it is sweet. Yeah. I just want to very quickly touch on like, we just talked about manipulation. And so like the mass manipulation of the crowds by like just going to certain places and dropping off like the rest spot stuff, like water and like
Mm,
stuff to like milk to rinse tear gas out of your eyes and stuff. Like it was so fun. Like just to
yeah.
like kind of put it specifically in an area to kind of encourage more people to head, more that direction. It's like, oh, it's so fun.
So good of Mia and Carson to invest in the protesting for the rights of individuals in this modern era. Truly heroes.
Yeah.
As long as their profits are going into social justice, I'm afraid I simply have no problems whatsoever with what's going on here.
I mean, it was based as hell, so I'm down. Yeah, and I just one of the last things, well, probably the last thing I want to touch on with these chapters overall before we get to like different things is like just how excellent and how fast paced that jump from like in that last section. Oh, Carson has pretty bad vibes and he's not too certain about things. Oh, it's we'll see what happens. And then as soon as he tells Mia, she's like, get out. And then within a couple of paragraphs, she's not just like, get out. She's like, fucking stop, Spence. Like, stop, Bolden, right now. You have to. Like, she, like, yeah, uses like two different types of their communication to get the message to him as soon as possible. And that is just that's such a fun and fast progression where we just kind of jump from, oh yeah, you should probably, like, if you have a bad vibe, yeah, probably get out, to being like, holy shit, run. Like, get the fuck out of there. Oh, it's so good.
And we still don't know. Like, now they were going to find out why is
Yeah.
the end of 2.3. So 2.4 presumably starts with the explanation.
Yeah, I'm
But
so curious, like, what's happening there? Yeah. So good. Okay. So, now we talked a little bit last week about the crime counter, and we've had a small update. So, take it away.
yes. Oh goodness. So there was kidnapping in 2.1, obviously, hostage taking and unlawful imprisonment in 2.2. And as far as the mercenaries being hired from the old customers, um, unclear if that's still a crime in their day and age. Murder with a crossbow. It turns out in America, it is perfectly legal to murder specifically with crossbows, which must be why they were used by Bolden. But
Makes so much
the
sense.
creation of a weapon from the bare essentials is actually also protected in the Constitution, so it's perfectly fine because it's a
Hmm.
very American thing to do. They were trying to incentivize becoming Rambos back in the day. Um,
Yeah.
that is to say that the the crime counter rap sheet is still under construction,
Mm-hmm.
though new editions are being made every chapter. Um, that said, I would like to highlight the contributions of a Commodore. The Bee Vampire said on our last thread that after citing some precedents of an Iowa Supreme Court case, Drone Guy is entitled to compensation for having his shins annihilated.
Woo.
In 1971, it was ruled that trespassing does not mean you have to cop unreasonably deadly force. Mia is liable for a precedented total of $30,000 in fines for battery. And it definitely contextualizes Mia's flagrant use of booby traps because
Yeah.
apparently that's just not on. And what a surprise too, because when I think of setting salt mines in my backyard using machinery that I've made from scraps of barbed wire and soup cans, I
Mm-hmm.
assume that that's just my right as a citizen. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I should probably go and dismantle mine at some point,
yeah,
just in case.
like and when you think about it, it's only the $30,000 in fines. Like if you can afford
Yeah.
that,
But my private property.
yeah, exactly. um,
Oof.
so having a lot of fun assembling that. I would like to note that as far as the keeping the crime counter going, I want the spreadsheet to be editable by Commodores, so that people can comment on it and give input. My current plan for that is to be like putting out a open version and then having a home version to make edits on myself and compile information from more widely, like pulling in comments from different threads. Um, so if you are interested in contributing, there's something that caught out to you as like actually little known fact that is something prosecutable. Would love to hear from you still, and you will of course be cited. Thank you to the Bee Vampire for their input. Very much appreciated.
Yeah. I think actually, I did just think as we were talking about it, I did think of one more illegal thing they've done, which is, illegally entering a residence.
Yes, of course, breaking and entering.
So there we go, breaking and entering. Although I don't know if that means you have to break something because the door was left open, but I don't know. I'll let the lawyer nerds discuss that.
It is true that entering and breaking is an entirely different crime, which is actually
So true.
Substantially less of a punishment because once you're inside, I mean, breaking things just sort of happens.
Yeah, it's just accidental,
I believe the primary case for that was in the Paddington 2. But I
don't think I've read that legal document, Paddington 2.
It was a very serious case at the time. I mean, it is
I
are the
understand.
rights of a animated bear enshrined under law. It's hard to say.
I mean, if not, they should be.
And you know what? Yeah, they should be. We'll have a special episode of the intertextual comparisons between Claw and Paddington 2 someday.
That's right.
So that brings us to foreshadowing. We have a couple of things that we're keeping an eye on, or IO, as it may be, because we did get to see the investigator, Ben, and given that Ben is not part of the government, that might actually be a point in his corner for his competence.
That's true. So seeing Ben was really, really interesting. I'm desperate to see more, but also extremely anxious about seeing more. Like, I'm going to be so stressed reading those chapters when they show up.
We've learned a bit more about Davy. We certainly have grasped the scope of his operation. Maybe we'll meet the butcher at some point, now that we have all of these extended Cavalcanti contacts known. We can. I think it's reasonable to assume that one among their number might have been the target that was shot in the eye. A possibility there is that we've stepped in a hornet's nest and that Mia might be hunted down by a wider community of criminals for having incensed them with violence.
I have genuinely no idea. I have no clue. I'm excited to see what happens, but I'm very terrible at like thinking up ideas for these things. So,
well, you did
question mark. Let's see it.
Though. You did catch the opportunity that a bug or a drone might be caught too late.
Yeah, but that's not like thinking about possibilities of what could happen. That's just kind of like connecting dots. I can connect some dots,
I'm gonna give you that.
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll take it. It doesn't feel earned. Okay. So now we can chat about our discussion question. So last week we wanted to know what was the most heinous yet least criminal deed done in these chapters.
And vice versa, what was the least monstrous and most criminal thing done?
Okay, so starting off, we had my tallest, who said the least criminal deed, but the most heinous, was naming your son Random, which...
That was pretty fucked.
That's a pretty fucking good argument. Like, yeah. Random's a very terrible name.
I really like it because you can be called Randy, and then you can reveal that your full name is Random.
I hate it.
But I am absolutely the kind of person that would name her kids just strange things for the sake of the joke. Rip and Tear are so up my alley.
Rip and Tear is good.
Like I've genuinely been convinced to consider Solomon by a friend of mine who
that's spicy.
Because you can just go by Sol, but This being a friend who was raised Christian, and so
Right.
found the name to be, good and biblical, while I was nerding out about Pale.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. There was a character called Solon Pale. I wonder if that's supposed to be short for Solomon.
I
I don't
believe
know.
it's Solary's Blaze Ferguson is his full name,
Oh,
which
wow. You
is
nerd.
also what I would name a kid. So
Yeah, okay, that's
I'm
fair.
the least criminal, most reprehensible when it comes to names. Is what's important
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. And continuing my tallest answer, sorry. The most criminal, least monstrous thing is adopting Valentina. She's a sweet small bean, and she needs to be protected.
And taught useful life skills like how to keep people incarcerated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good skill.
Landis wisely points out, Landis 963 wisely points out that kidnapping a baby might qualify for the first set of conditions or the second, but jury's still out. It could go either way.
Could go either way. I mean, I think it's pretty criminal. But yeah.
Have we considered
Uh,
that, as far as it being criminal, a jury would rule against Natalie because she's a bit cringe?
well, that's a fair point. I probably would vote against Natalie if I was on a jury. She is pretty cringe.
That said, she
Yeah.
does color coordinate all of her
No, that's the
outfits.
cringe part.
Oh, but it's good
Yeah, that's
though.
too cringe for me. No, it's too much.
Okay, I'm rapidly realizing who I must have the most in common with among these characters.
Yeah. Oh no. Okay, so 40i2 says most criminal is fabricating new identities. It's not really immoral, but it does mess up official records, including tax records. Davy Small Potatoes, Mia should worry about the IRS. And the most monstrous, saving Geo, I don't know that character, sorry, isn't illegal. It's actually a good deed. But using her dramatic situation to mold her into a daughter without giving her any choice, this comes as extremely creepy and exploitative. Yes, that's true. The most disturbing kind of kidnapping without having to actually kidnap her.
We did talk about how she's latched on to Carson, and especially within that, him offering her useful skills for independence is curious because
Yeah.
if you're equipping a kid to run away, they might think that they feel more safe and like that obviously you're not keeping them because you're trying to make them more independent. But the things that go into running away from home and things that go from into living independently of your parents, very separate.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
Valentina is in a position to realize that. I mean, after all, she just popped into existence a week ago.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Blue Bum Blue Blue 2 thought that Mia stealing a baby was the least monstrous and most criminal deed. She's a good mom. She's doing a great job. Ripley seems engaged, happy, and thriving. It's a super legal thing to do to raise a kid so well, is what I think. I don't think that should contribute to the monstrousness of the discrete incidents of baby theft. Most heinous least criminal, Blue Bum Blue Blue 2, said that could be the police killing people at the protest, which was run over by Mia's sort
Yeah.
of very grayed out morality and her lack of investment in their well-being. But Mia does note that people had died in the protest over the cancelled election and that police wounded a homeless teen who died within the next few hours. It sounds like police were using lethal force to quell a large group of desperate, disenfranchised people. Heinous, but hardly criminal. The
Yeah.
interesting twist we have now learned on this perspective is that these were possibly private police officers.
Which is even more heinous. That's, yeah. Even worse.
How do we know that they're not just criminals? Maybe they're just good. Maybe they just have good branding at that point.
I mean, they're only criminals if the state prosecutes them, basically. And I don't think that the state is going to be considering anything that the private police force does to be against the law.
Aye.
So, yeah, yeah. we glossed over, like, I don't think we mentioned that in our last episode, and I feel bad for that because, like, holy shit, that's really, yeah, you're right, like, that's fucked.
I think we've
That's super fucked.
as quadruple B2, because I saying Blue Bumblebee 2 multiple times is really
Very,
gonna
very
it's
difficult
really
name
gonna
to
twist
say.
my
Yeah,
tongue. But
yeah.
uh, I think we made the same mistake that Mia did, or if we can call it a mistake, of getting so in the perspective of a single person and reading their narrative
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't necessarily extend out our view to try and get a more objective lens. And
Yeah.
you know, as far as looking through Carson's eyes, um, we just had a whole host of people kidnapped. Someone's just been shot in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's protests ongoing in against the senator, and we have no idea what's going into that. So the
Yeah.
encroaching flames of the society collapsing around us is definitely something that we ought to keep an eye on, because most likely it's
Mm-hmm.
going to uh, barge in on our perspective sometime soon.
Yeah. Well, I did really like in the first arc they talked about, like, oh, you miss so much when you're out on a job, and I do really like that. It feels like we keep on getting that, where it's like you just kind of offhandedly mention, something that's happening, but you can't focus on it because we're so focused on, on the crimes, on trying to take down Davy, that we can only really get, a couple of sentences. Oh, you can see, like, the senator's house where, like, lines of private police are, like, lining up ready to stop the protesters. And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like,
Yikes.
yeah, yikes. Okay, so Sweet Manzana says that the least illegal thing is Natalie complaining about Ripley's clothes for not being girly. And they note you shouldn't enforce what children wear like that, much less other people's children, which was, I felt like
Interesting
a pretty
phrasing.
cruel
Interesting
ending.
phrasing.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal. Fair enough, though. And the most illegal thing was helping Valentina is the most moral crime they've done. But besides that, the other job where they kidnapped another kid because they thought they would be better at it than the other people that could be hired for it. And yeah, to be fair, as they note, they do have experience with child abduction. So
Mm-hmm. I imagine
yeah.
that might have been a trial run where they were wondering, are we going to get
Oh,
a new
God.
kid in the family? Like,
Yeah.
can we handle this divorce in such a way that both of them sign off custody to each other and we end up with it? I
Yeah.
haven't seen that rom-com before,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it's a premise somewhere.
I think it'd be a fun one.
Macy 1 said that the least criminal and most reprehensible thing was Wildbow creating Mia and not making her signal. The most criminal and least
Yeah.
reprehensible thing was my plans to replace Carson.
And,
Godspeed to you,
I
Macy. You
yeah.
may have stiff competition. Please look out for any emotional manipulation, being shot in the eye with a crossbow, being kidnapped from a pub because someone started playing Imagine Dragons to rickroll people. Um,
Look, I think no, but, like, he's on the right path though.
yeah.
I think Macy won. Like, he really knows what's happening here, and yeah, like, it's just the right thing to do,
Mm-mm.
regardless of consequences.
I think that they should go for it. They have my absolute support.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um,
Okay, so that's our discussion question for last week. I hope everyone had fun with that one. It was fun. I enjoyed reading everyone's answers. And our new discussion question is, what do you think will get Mia and Carson caught in the end?
will they be caught at all? I don't think so. I think they're gonna get away with it. I think they're gonna be fine.
I think they're going to get caught. And I'm curious about what it's going to be. Yeah, so thanks everyone for listening. You can check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow.
This is his protest. We're just rest stop people.
Yeah, please give us a rating and review on the podcatcher of your choice as well. So we've got a couple of ratings and we got a review, and that's really cool. And thank you so much.
And if you want to chat to us about the show, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find the invite link at doofmedia.com/discord. We would love to chat with you. We'd love to hear your perspective. I hope we've given the impression that we will be citing our sources. because it's
Hmm.
absolutely a treasure to be hearing from people and hearing their perspectives. We won't just be recycling your points of view.
Exactly. Except for when I forget who said something.
In that
And
case,
I apologize.
we are perfectly happy to make amendments. um,
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Bye for now.